Genesis chapter 1, verse 4. It's taken us a while to get here, but that's where we're up to. I just want to mention something that deals with what's going on in the world today. And the reason I'm mentioning it is because part of what we're dealing with in the beginning of Genesis is clarity. The word which I translate as light actually means clarity. There was no light per se as in physical light, but it was clarity. When you have clarity, the light goes up. And the word darkness we didn't translate as dark, but as a thick haze. So in today's day and age, there is a thick haze going on around the world, if you wish, in many different ways. And so I just wanted to mention something that it says at the end of the book of Daniel, Daniel chapter 12, sentence 9 and 10. It says that at the end of time they will be elucidated and clarified by many people. The wicked will act wickedly, and none of the wicked will understand, but the wise will understand. And it's a very interesting idea, because a lot of people think they are wise and think they understand. It's not talking about those people. It's talking about a different type of understanding, an understanding that's not limited to just what's happening and confusion, but a perception. So there are many people who see things from a very physical perspective and see where society is going with what's happening. There are many people who don't want to see. They prefer not to look, which has always been the case throughout history, and people don't want to look and be aware, and they don't understand why the destruction happens when they're doing the right thing by not looking at what's happening. So being aware is very important, because it enables a person to get beyond things. Sometimes you can't stop or control, but you can make yourself more protected by being aware. Then there are those who are spiritual and see spiritual things, but often the spiritual people are just as limited as the physical people, and they see the spiritual from a limited spiritual perspective, not an all-encompassing, not from the Creator's view. One of the things we're trying to do through the classes is help us go through the words and things to get a Creator's point of view as well, what our perspective is and what the Creator's perspective is, because the Creator is not limited to our perspective. So, verse 4 of Genesis in Hebrew is Vayar Elikim es ha'or ki tov vayavdel Elikim bein ha'or vein ha'choshech. God saw the light, that it was good, and God separated between the light and between the darkness. A very simple sentence. The translation that we have, that we will be explaining on this verse, is, and with open perception, a power of boundaries infuses the pure clarity so that it is ready, and thus it is distinguished by a power of boundaries from within the pure clarity and from within the thick haze. And we will go through each word, showing what each word means. But as verse 3 spoke about clarity, and verse 2 spoke about choshech, which is a thick haze or darkness. These two terms, or and choshech, or light, and choshech, darkness or thick haze, define and create separation by virtue of the very definition. The moment you give something a definition, it limits it to that definition. It's that and not something else. Yet, these definitions are born of one thought. And it's only through further development of Or and Choshech that the actual separation of appearance of separation occurs. So at this point in creation, there is no separation. The terms are delineated. That's the only separation that you have terms for it. But other than that, they still exist as one. The clarity, which Or is, forms a balance that fits in and can now be applied to move on creation. So the word that it is good actually means that it fits. The common translation of darkness and light ascribes the lower interpretive meaning of both words. Such compilation denies us deeper understanding and thus undermines our ability to truly understand and the message that was intended for humanity. So many times I found that people say, well, you have to explain things the way people understand it. And that is actually true. You have to explain it the way people understand it. Otherwise, they cannot accept it. And if you explain it with words they don't understand, you'll have achieved nothing other than the words there. But if people don't know and understand that there are other words and other meanings, and you limit them to the way you want them to understand, they don't make the connection. And this has been a problem throughout with the translations, that they've kept people limited to limited meanings of the words, and has unwittingly taken away the perspective of the size of the human component in the universe by contributing to a lesser understanding. Mankind has assumed an importance that fosters belief that it is our choices that make the difference here. A deeper translation sheds light on the fact that only by recognizing the Creator's intention for us can we have proper and appropriate impact within the flow. So unless we find our direct connection with the Creator and understand the Creator's perspective, we can go on thinking we're the greatest and we're doing what God wants and we're doing everything, but it's all in our own mind and our own world, and it may not be exactly what the Creator wants. You may feel and think it is. That may be your experience because that's where you're holding, but you don't see it in a more expansive way. It's seeing it only from a very limited place. The name Elohim, which they translate as God, and we've showed that the word actually means a power of boundaries, is translated by using the word God. But when you do it in this sentence, in this verse, it will be, then God saw the light and God separated. But the sentence has much more meaning when we understand that Elohim, the word Elohim, indicates another level of the Creator's expression in creation. It's not about just a word God. It's about different aspects and levels of the Creator. In Hebrew, we don't really have the term God because every expression, everything is God, everything is a Creator, but as it comes out in different ways and different manners. So this verse 4, is composed in two parts. It's about the perpetuation of action that occurs on two different levels. Elohim, which is translated God, and we translate the power of boundaries, is not a being, it's a word designated to express what is happening here. The Creator's presence is everywhere in a seamless response to all. It's just there. You don't have to do anything to bring it forward. Any questions? Okay, Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, famous commentary on the Torah, he writes that it says Vayomer Elikim, Vayar Elikim Asar Ketav, God, or the power boundaries, infuses the clarity that it's fitting, or the God saw the light and it was good. And he says this statement, along with other statements in the Torah which says, and God saw that it was good. At the end of his creation it says, and God saw that it was very good, is intended, if we understand it correctly, to set forth one great truth. The world's continued existence is directly dependent on the will of God, of the Creator. And he also writes that it says, Vayar Elikim es ha'or, that God saw the light, kitov, that it is good. It doesn't say that he saw that the kitov ha'or, that the light is good. He saw the light, and it was good. And that makes a difference in understanding it, because he doesn't say the light is good, but then it refers, we saw the light, and it's good for the creation. The good goes on the creation, which goes into the word of fitting. As we explained, the word tov doesn't mean good, but it means fitting. And if you say, huh? Yeah, the word which is translated as good actually means fitting. It's fitting for the world. It's fitting for the creation. It's fitting for whatever it is. It fits in. So there's a big difference when you translate it that way rather than good. Actually, this brings up another thought, and the other thought is that if it says the light is good, that means the darkness is no good. So if God decides the light is good, the darkness is no good, why doesn't God just make the darkness obsolete? So it's very strange that that doesn't happen. Rather, God makes a separation, which means both are good in certain ways. The darkness serves its purpose and the light its purpose. But we don't translate it that way. We translate it as thick as clarity and haze. And we will go back to the flow of the sentence. And also in another way, the verse says, God saw the light was good, or with open perception, the power boundaries infuses the clarity so that it is ready for the creation. And God separates between the light and between the dark. Or as we translate, and thus is distinguished the power boundaries by the power boundaries from within, the pure clarity, and from within the thick haze. When it says between the light and between the darkness, there's an expression, bein kaf or bein kaf. When you use the word bein, it kind of means whatever happens. When it says between the light and between the darkness, another idea is that the Creator's will happen no matter if there's light or if there's darkness. Either way, the Creator's will is what's going to end up happening. That's just another way of looking at the words, bein kaf or bein kaf. Okay, so I'm going to go over the words word by word, just explain a little bit and have a basic thought, and then explain a little bit more about the words. It's just going to unravel a little bit. If you have questions, you can just raise your hand. You're welcome. If you want to repeat something, that's fine. Okay. The verse begins by Yar, and it was seen. Or we translate with open perception. With open perception open perception is an element of pure clarity. We'll go more into the open as well. A power of boundaries. It uses the word Elohim, commonly translated God, but we've translated a power of boundaries, providing each creation with the boundary that defines that creation in order to enable its existence. Because if you don't give a definition to something, it doesn't exist. And we see that in life all the time, that people live in their cubicle, live in their world, live in whatever space they're living in, and things that happen outside don't exist. When you say, hey, there are other people next door, there are other people in another country, they live differently, understand differently, what are you talking about? I never heard of such a thing. And so this is an issue that goes on in society, that people only think within the framework that they have and don't realize that there's something outside what they see. There's more than just them in the world. Infuses, the boundaries infuse, it gives energy to the pure clarity, illuminating the definition in order for it to be classified as an existence, so that it serves its purpose and it's ready to be an appropriate expression wherever it is. and thus it is distinguished by a description, through the power of boundaries, the wisdom of boundaries in each creation. A power of boundaries means the wisdom of that individual boundary. So while the word Elohim is used in many places, it's the wisdom of that specific place. From within, it's an essential element of the pure clarity, which remains pure, and from within, it's an essential element of the thick haze that also remains pure. So that's just one way of simply translating, explaining the fourth verse. Just a little bit more of explanation. Both clarity and lack of clarity are part of the power in the creation. Distinction between the two, clarity and lack of clarity, is made by giving creations power to make decisions. If it was only clarity, we couldn't make a decision. If it was only lack of clarity, we couldn't make a decision. But by having a little bit of both, it gives us ability to make decisions. Understanding it from that perspective, free will is in a person's mind. It's not a defined space. Instead, it exists as the place from which we formulate definitions. We're using the mind for that. Thought also plays an important part in the healing process. Changing a person's perspective, the word or the words you use in your mind enable the mind to create a shift in the energy flow of the whole body. The way sometimes we don't understand what we're saying or how we're saying it or how things are coming out. That's because in our mind we have it in a certain way. But if we change the way we think, it will come out in a different way. And people will see it more than we will. Which is why sometimes when people tape themselves and listen, they say, I said that? That's me? People often don't hear the tone of voice or sometimes even what they're saying. But if you realize, then you're able to change. And it's a change in thought for the most part. Attitude, thinking. A lot of what we do is based from our thought or feelings. Now, for who is the distinction created? Nothing is concealed from the Creator, because the Creator is the source of everything, all thoughts, all emotions, all feelings, everything that exists. The Creator has no requirement for definition or distinction, and therefore our differences, our distinctions, the terms we use don't change anything as far as the Creator is concerned. God gives life to everyone equally and everything. What you do with it is your choice. And God allows everyone to do whatever they're going to do until they cut off all the energy, life force, or they open it up. Prior to verse 4, the past, present, and future all exist as one. Thus, the purpose of creating distinction in the first chapter of Genesis, it's because it's there to allow future events to eventuate on their own by creating the terminology for it. The distinction, it allows it to happen. It's like if you want something to happen first, imagine it, think it, and then it happens. And each thought appears at the appropriate point in time as a new thing, a new present. But it's all intrinsically connected with all of existence. It's the Creator's desire to prepare those things that will happen in a sequence that will ultimately allow them to become clear and defined by the end of time and space. So we're going through a journey where not everything is clear and defined. But at the end of this journey, whenever that is, everything becomes clear. Or is supposed to come clear. When we get there, I'll tell you. I won't have to tell you, no. The or clarity, is hidden deep within each person. That clarity of the Creator is actually every person has it in them. It's within each creation. At the proper time, each person has the potential to open to that which is his or her natural connection to the source and flow of life. It may take time, but we all get there. So now I'm just going to mention a few of the sources for the translation, a few of the books that I took it from. Any questions? Yeah.
No.
No? I'll get to it. Yeah. I'll get to it. One thing at a time. See, I prepared it for its right time.
I have a question.
Yes.
Why did God need to create the concept of time?
Okay, how would you exist if time didn't exist?
Well, we would exist in a way that wouldn't be limited by time. We would be.
Okay, how would you exist if there was no time?
Then we would be infinite. We wouldn't have a beginning or an end. We would
Oh,
just.
so in other words, so you do not comprehend how you would exist as a human being, a defined being, if there was no time. You have no comprehension what it means that time doesn't exist.
Well, it's impossible. We live in a world of time. So how can you imagine a world?
Exactly. So that's exactly what it is. We can only exist in the framework that we exist in. It's not a question what would be outside it.
No, we be beyond God creating us. Why did God need to create a concept of time?
God did not need to create a concept of time. For the Creator, the Creator has no need for any limited existence. We were created because the Creator wanted to. And as you know, when people want something, you can't ask a question. They just want it. Why do you want it? You want it. Doesn't have to make sense. The creation doesn't make sense. If you think about everything, it doesn't make sense. But then we don't comprehend God's thoughts. So how can it make sense to us? We are limited. We have limited beings, whether in time or space or in our perception. We have a beginning and end, and we don't comprehend something that's beyond that has no beginning and end. Which means the thoughts of the Creator are not the same thoughts as the ones we have. It's different. Okay? You know why God created them. Okay.
Yes, it's the purpose for the sun and the moon and the constellations.
God created time in order that the sun and moon constellations should have something to do?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. To give us something to do.
What time shop starts?
All right.
Everything has a purpose. What is their purpose?
I don't know. In a small way, you can say what the purpose is. In a broader sense, I don't know. There are different perspectives of purpose. Yeah.
If we were created as limited beings, that the very nature of that suggests that time is nature. If you're limited, that's measurement also. So
Limitation is a measurement, and time is a measurement. Yeah. That's right. So we can have birthday parties. All right. That's the reason. One good reason. Okay. So we began the verse, and thus it is distinguished through the power boundaries that is based in the Sforno, Rabbeinu Bachya, and Sefer Priya. Hagonos, he has a very Kabbalistic or more deeper reason going into the distinction, very spiritual. Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch writes that it implies a separate existence or a separate purpose. The distinction means it has its own purpose, its own reason. The power of boundaries. In Psalms it says, Ato Yatzavta Gvulis Aretz, you have set up the boundaries of Aretz, of earth, or of desire. For those who haven't been here before, we translated the the translation of the word earth actually means the desire to do the Creator's will. So earth means desire. And Rashi in Bamidbar in Numbers 16:5, right, brings borders or boundaries were set up by the Holy One in this world. It's a power that's necessary to be exerted in order to make distinctions. There have to be boundaries, because if God did not make boundaries, you wouldn't have distinctions of things. Everything would be one mush. From within, the word bain is often used to denote something between 2 points. It's a point of connection from both sides. Sometimes the point is external, sometimes internal. The whole creation at this point is in thought, so it's internal, and therefore all points, all aspects here, from one point to the other, are all within the Creator's thought. The pure clarity in Psalms 36:10, it says, for with you is the source of life. Through your clarity, we become enabled to see clarity. So the translation here from your light, but we're translating light as clarity. From within, since all aspects of existence are within the source, we all exist within the Creator. The Creator is everywhere, and we're existing within the Creator, inside the Creator. Which is interesting when you think about it.
I guess my sister was very little, and
But
she
what?
said, my sister,
Yeah.
when we were little, we were little girls, and like, who is God and who is God? And she says, God is this huge giant, and everything, we're inside God. We live inside
That's correct. We live inside God.
We're inside Him. Everything is inside Him because He's everything. So
That's
it's
right.
God. So I got to tell my sister, I said, yeah, you were right. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
We're all inside.
The thick haze, according to both the Ramban and Rambam, who often have differences, this is not the same thick haze. When it says choshech, or darkness, or thick haze in verse 4, it's not the same thick haze or darkness that's in verse 2. It's a different level of haze or darkness. The word is the same, but the vibration or frequency is not the same.
How do we know that?
How do we know that? That is what the Ramban and Rambam say. Do you want me to tell you how they know it, or how I know it?
I mean, is there a difference in the way the word is spelled?
The word is spelled exactly the same. It's pronounced exactly the same. Do you want to know how we know it? I don't know how they know it. They don't describe how they know it. I can't tell you how they know it. I can only tell you how I know it, and it makes sense to me because verse 2 is talking about one level in creation, level 1. This is talking about level 4 in creation. So it's a step further in the creation, a step where more boundaries are created. When more boundaries are created, more limitations are created, it changes the frequency and the darkness or the light or the clarity. It changes. When you go through the night, okay, the night, the darkness at the beginning of the night is different than the darkness in the middle of the night, different than the darkness in the morning. The daylight, it's different in the morning, different in the middle of the day, and different at the end of the day. It changes. It's light, it's dark, but it's different. So if you just look at it in a general sense, it's the same. The term and word is the same, but if you're looking at specifics, there are differences. A different feeling, a different energy. So it makes a lot of sense, what they say, even though I don't know what. I'm just quoting them, but yeah, it makes sense. That's why I quoted it, because it made sense to me as well. Okay. Now, I'm going to give you some other possible translations of the same verse. Okay? And then we're going to go back to explaining the words a bit more, word for word. So I'm just playing a bit back and forth. It's tennis, table tennis, whatever.
Ping pong.
Ping pong. Yeah. So some other possible translations, and they're based on the various interpretations of the words, but I'm just giving them for consideration so you understand that the words have many different meanings, more than just one meaning. And Elohim saw something in the light that was Tov. And Elohim distinguished from within the clarity and from within the opaqueness. That's another way of translating it. Another way is, and the seeing of the power boundaries of the Creator of Elohim infused the Or. The actual, by God looking at it, that gave it energy. So that it is ready for creation. Or and Choshech are both messengers and the expressions of the Creator. So clarity and thick haze, or light and darkness, are both messengers. They're both angels to do what the Creator wants, whatever it is. The name Elohim separates between the Or and the Choshech. Definitions create the separation between the two. Or another way of saying it, and Elohim separated both in the Or and in the Choshech. Thus, it's a further step in development of these two things. It's a further development in the aspect of Aretz, of the desire of the Creator. Regarding the other aspects, it says in Psalms 33:6, with word or matter of Yud He Vav He Hashem, and the Shemayim was made with the Ruach of his mouth, and all the hosts were formed. I've translated a little bit different. I usually do different translations, so if you look it up, you'll find the words different. If you need them, I'll give it to you later. It can also be read, and Elohim separated or distinguished itself within the Or and within the Choshech. The boundaries distinguished themselves within whatever it was. Okay, so they're just playing on the words, shifting around, and when one spends a lot of time, there are many different thoughts that go with it. This class is very quick, and you'd have to go for it many times, but at least the information is there. If you need it written, I can always give it to you written as well. So now, further word meaning, and then hopefully we'll get to the board here as well. The beginning of verse 4, and with. The concept dimensions are formed in thought and with intention. In the thought of the Creator and with intention of the Creator. Open. We said open perception, not just perception. Seeing is perception, but we put open because the word, the letters have sounds. There's no vowels in the Hebrew language, but they're symbols of sound that move the words. Under, on top, in front. It has a patach. Patach means open, patuach, open. So that note, which is a straight line, is open. It's called patach. And because that is what it says, vayar, it's underneath the openness, it indicates an opening. And it gives the word a movement towards openness. That's the sound. It moves towards an openness of some sort. An openness of perception. Although the words sight and perception can have the same meaning, in this case there is a distinctive difference. There's no issue of distance here, as all is existing as one. Here, seeing is internal. It's internal sight, not the eyes, not external, but internal. Perception expresses that which encompasses everything with more clarity. The Hebrew word or also refers to perception, understanding of the heart. Till now, most of it, we're talking about understanding the mind, but understanding of the heart is also very important, and that's also where you have thought and you have perception and understanding. And in fact, in connecting with the Creator, you need to have the understanding of the heart and perception of the heart together with the mind. If you have one without the other, it's not balanced. You need both to give yourself a balance. And when you have both, the mind and the heart together, then you connect with the Creator. Because you know your place and you can let go of your whole self in order to be at one with the Creator. Through our perception, we infuse things with energy and life. The way we see things, that's our energy is drawn there. Elohim here infuses the art to enable it to begin journeying along the path to achieve ultimate goal of why this creation was formed. So there's no explanation why it's formed, other than at this point in time, this is what's happening because the Creator wants it to happen for whatever end result it needs to be. Infuses. In the verse it says, it uses the word S. The word S has many meanings. In common translation, they never translate it. It's a word that you almost never find translated in any book. It's Aleph and Tov, 2 letters. It's very strange. But the word actually has many different meanings, and in each place it has its own specific meaning. Here we use the word S to mean infuses. You won't find this translation anywhere because no one translates it. It means it infuses, and that's because under it is a segel. A segel is 2 dots, one next to the other, and between them underneath a 3rd dot. That's a segel. It's a triangular formation of dots, and those 3 dots are called Tiferes, beauty. They infuse a balance. They infuse something into whatever's happening. It's the combination signifies the incorporation of all life force that was created by use of this expression. In the same sense, S here is a haze. That's to say that it affects the Or, even though it hasn't got a translation of its own, it affects the light, the clarity in some way. S is the complementary component that allows the world to exist with Or. In other words, if it was just Or, clarity on its own, because it's the Creator's clarity, the world and existence creation couldn't accept it. Therefore, the letter S brings in an energy into the clarity so it can be used for the creation. It won't destroy it by being too powerful, but it'll be appropriate in each place. So here, the first word is Vayar. Okay. Yo, let's see if I can get this. The top here, that first word, Vayar, those letters, if you rearrange them, the second line here, the same letters, is Ro'oi. Ro'oi means fitting. So this is one of the ways that we sometimes understand things in the Torah, is by rearranging the letters. It's sometimes used, and in this place, it's used to understand that the seeing makes things fitting in an appropriate way. That the expression should be fitting for whatever it's created. Another meaning of the word S is also means forms. As it says in Isaiah 45, chapter 45:7, he Yotzer Or Vora Choshech. He forms clarity, and Bora brings forth Choshech. So there it tells you what he does with clarity. It says he forms clarity. So if the word forms clarity is there with clarity, that's very possible that the word here, S, could be also translated forms clarity. And there it actually says in that verse, and he creates Ra. The bad is also created by the Creator. I am God who created all these things. So there it says God creates everything, the good and the bad. And the bad has its purpose. That's quite simply. For those who want to separate and say God has nothing to do with the bad, God is responsible for everything.
What's the verb with Choshech?
Yotzer or uvore choshech. Uvore. Bore, but it doesn't have a dot in it, so it's a ver. Osa shalom. Yeah, uvore ra. He makes peace and he creates ra. Anyway, the pure clarity. Any questions? Nothing yet. Okay. Yes.
Why does it say Yotzer for Shalom and Ubore for Ra?
Well, when you meet Isaiah, you'll ask him why he used the words he used. You're asking a question which people have. There are different. Yotzer means to form. Bora means to create. That's why you're asking why one word is used for one thing and why another is. When do you use form and when do you use create? Okay, they're both creation, but actually bore has a very different meaning. Or is formed. We see that the clarity in creation is formed, but the choshech, the darkness or the haze, comes in the second verse. There was no formation then. It would still started from the verse 2, which was Breishis bara. It's still part. The choshech is part of the bara, and the bara has a different meaning. The bara is translated creation. People translate the beginning God created, and what we showed in the first class is that it actually means with wisdom was brought forth a power of boundaries. The word bore that's translated as creation actually means a clearing. That the Creator made a clearing within itself for an existence to appear. The word bar is you clear a space. It has many different meanings.
God created clearing
within himself. So that something, like in your mind, you create a space in your mind to imagine a building, to imagine a world, to imagine things, okay? That space that you created in your mind, what type of existence is it? Is it a real space as you see outside, or is it in your mind? It's part of you. It only exists within your mind, but you've given it a space to exist. That's how everything exists within the Creator. It's like in the Creator's mind. The Creator is there, your mind is there. As long as you're thinking about it, it exists. If you stop thinking about it, it stops existing. That's why we have Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year. We ask God to give life, to think about creation for another year, to keep giving us life, not to stop thinking about us. That's what it's about. Anyway, so the pure clarity will be fully revealed in a future time and a future place. The Zohar in Genesis explains the words Kitov refers to a future time of the resurrection of the dead. This reference supports the idea of all existence, that it's always open to a place that exists beyond the reality of death. Since we're all going to awaken at some point in the future, after we die, that means everyone has in them something that's beyond death. There's something within us that's beyond it all. Thus, in the future, reality will be reopened to beyond death. Mankind's relationship to time and space, as we know it, will cease to exist at that point. Once you don't have death, and once you don't have all the limitations, then something else opens up. But it's very difficult for people to comprehend what it is because they don't exist there yet. They haven't experienced it in a cognitive way anyway. The sages say that with this light, that or clarity of verse 4, if a person has that light, they can see from one end of the world to the other. They can see everything. Nothing is hidden to a person who is on this level where they have this type of clarity. Now I'm going to show you something else. The numerical equivalent of the word Esar, the light, or the pure clarity, I should say, is 613. So here it goes. The S is Aleph and Toph, which is 401. The Toph is 401. The Ha'ar is Reish is 200, Vav is 6, Aleph is 1, and Hey is 5. It's 212. 401, 212 equals 613. Now, nowhere, yes.
So you're multiplying the value of the hour with the value of the tough to get to the 4.
I'm adding it.
What's tough?
Toph is 400.
Oh, 400.
Yeah,
That's right. Once it's hidden from the account, yeah.
that's right. So, nowhere does it say there are 613 commandments. This is something that came about later on. The rabbi started teaching the 613, figure out which they are, exactly how you count them. There's some differences. Some count this one, not that one. But I always wondered, God never said the 613. Moses never said it. So where's this number 613 come from? Well, where does the word commandments come from? Everyone says commandment. Mitzvah is commandment. Actually, the word mitzvah is means tzav, connection. So basically, Moses said that God has given you these things to connect with Him. And then people went and translated it at some point as commandment, not connection. So actually, it's 613 connections with the Creator. In other words, if you're doing one thing that the Creator wants, you're connecting with God, you don't have to do anything else. It doesn't make sense to say you have 613 things to do when you only have to do one. If you're connected, you're connected. You don't do two things to connect. All you need to do is one. So basically, there are 613 ways that the Creator has given people to connect, and as long as you're doing one of them, you're connected. But where does the 613 come from? So when I studied this, I said, now I know. Because the numerical value of the clarity of creation, the infusion of clarity, which means that the way we connect is through our clarity. When I remember I was a teenager and I said, God, if you want me to do something, you have to tell me clearly. If you don't tell me clearly, I'll just do what I want and have a good time. It has to be clear. Many people come, they have dreams and they hear voices, they hear this, but it's not clear. It's in metaphor, it's in this. Those are spiritual levels, usually lower spiritual levels. That's not a direct connection. A direct connection is clear. There is no way for different interpretation. It is very clear. So this place is clear. So the 613, the vibration, the frequency of the clear connection is 613, and that's why the Kabbalists used it, and later on everyone else used 613 commandments or 613 mitzvahs, whatever it is, because of this. It reflected this. But most people use it not knowing what it actually reflects. They think it reflects 613 different commandments which throughout the Torah, and they figure it out. But it's not exactly that. So I found that very interesting, actually, when I saw this. Now, the verse could have said, yes, you want to say something? That's good.
613 ways of being connected.
Correct.
You observe one.
Mm-hmm.
So
In other words, you have a way to connect with God, and you're doing what you connect. I do what I'm doing, which connects. We each have our path and our way that connects. We don't have to do the same thing. Everyone has their connection, and that's what God gives us: different pathways to connect, and that makes a lot more sense. That God gives us different pathways and different ways. He created us unique. He created us differently, and gave us that ability. And that's why I've always pointed out that it doesn't say 10 commandments in the Torah anywhere. In Hebrew, it doesn't say 10 commandments. That was created later on. It says 10 matters or 10 sayings, never commandments. Just 10 matters of connecting. It doesn't say commandments. Commandments was created later on by someone who wanted to put fear into people, the fear of God and control that religion often does. But had nothing to do with the Torah, nothing to do with God's guidance. And it doesn't say that in Hebrew either, commandments, just 10 matters. In the verse, it says, Vayar Elikim es Erketov, Hashem saw the light, or the pure clarity, the fusion of pure clarity, that it was fitting. These two words, es ha'or, the light or the infusion of clarity, actually does not have to be in a sentence, in the verse. It could just say, Vayar Elikim, and Elikim saw, Kitov, that it was good. In the verse 2 it says, and God created the light, or God created the clarity, and then it says, and God saw that it was good. Why does it have to add the words, and the light was good? It seems superfluous, extra. The reason is because if it would say, and God saw that it was good, it wouldn't refer to the clarity in verse 3. It would go back to the first verse, that the creation of heaven and earth is good. It would refer to something else, which would then include the choshech, the darkness, or the thick haze, in verse 2. It would include everything else. And there, it was a very big confusion, a thick haze. So the thick haze wasn't fitting. Therefore, it has to specify what it's talking about, that it's talking about the light or the clarity, and not the other things. Any questions? Okay, so I'm just one more thing before I conclude. The word Havdalah, distinguishing or separating, Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch explains that this word separating is different than the word kores, to cut off, shever, to break, or pored, to separate. There are different Hebrew words if you want to separate. The meaning of badal is not merely separation, which can be a negative separation from something, but badal is also a positive connotation, a separation from one thing from another, in order to assign a special existence and purpose of its own. So it's not a separation to separate, it's a separation to give something its purpose. That's what uses the word badal. The other words are separation in a negative way. This is separation in a positive way. And that's with everything. We have everything in life has two opposites. It could be used in one way, it could be used in another way. It often depends on the situation and our perception of things. And so I think we'll stop here unless anyone has any questions.
Number 613.
Yes.
In addition to the number mitzvahs, or whatever word that he used to describe, is that also the same number of the bones and sinews in the human body?
Yes.
I don't see in
it says that there are 248 positive, 365 loisasa, and that is corresponding to the bones and the sinews in a person. I never counted them, although we did some dissecting of things in science in school, but I don't think we did a body. So
There's
no,
supposed to be a connection between those two numbers.
there is supposed to be a connection. Actually, there are people who knew exactly which ones they were. And there's a story about the Vilna Gaon, the Gra. It used to be a custom in Europe in olden times where rabbis would go away from the community for a year, 2, 3, and travel as poor beggars around so they could experience life. In order to be able to guide the community, they have to have experience. And the way you have experience is by experiencing it. And so it was a custom that many rabbis went away for a few years, traveling from town to town. But you didn't have communication like now. There was no Twitter, there was nothing else, so no one knew who they were. And they experienced people and life. And so he was on a journey.